right. Hello, Kitsap. Hope you are having a great Saturday. It is 47 degrees in Kitsap County. It is Saturday, October 22nd. So glad that you can join us today for our interview. And today we have Tarra Simmons, Washington House of Representative for District 23. She has obviously appeared on the conduit before, but she is back again because it is election time. And though many of us in the audience have already met Tara, uh, let me go ahead and give you a little exposition on Tara. So, a history of fighting for us. Tara Simmons is a lawyer, a civil rights activist, and a national leader in the fight for criminal justice reform. Raised in Bremerton, she has faced some of the biggest barriers to success and opportunity, from poverty to opiate use disorder and incarceration. It was with the help of this community, friends, family, colleagues, and neighbors, and its resilience that she was able to overcome these circumstances and become a tireless advocate for change. Tara doesn't simply talk about the challenges, she has faced them for herself. After her incarceration, she experienced firsthand the challenges of reentry, economic insecurity, housing affordability, and lack of access to healthcare, education, and job skills training. These are big challenges that many people from all walks of life in our community face on a daily basis. As a registered nurse, Tara advocated for her patients and our community for over a decade. After starting her own recovery journey, she decided to go to law school and learn how to make a larger impact on the community. Tara graduated with honors and received a prestigious Skaden fellowship to help people get the legal counsel they need and move on after criminal justice involvement. When the Washington State Bar refused to admit her, she took her fight to the state Supreme Court and won in a unanimous same day decision that highlighted the need for opportunities and second chances for all people. Tara is also the co founder of the Civil Survival Project, a nonprofit organization that provides legal and policy advocacy to help formerly incarcerated people better reintegrate in their communities. And by the way, there's actually a job opening that I saw on Facebook, and it's a great one. So if you're looking to make that kind of impact, you should definitely apply. In 2016, Tara was appointed by the Governor Jay Inslee to the Washington State Reentry Council, where she was elected by her peers as co chair. He has also appointed her to the Public Defense Advisory Board, and she serves as the advisory board member to the Washington Supreme Court Gender and Justice Commission. Now, I've said quite a bit, and there's even more. I do want you to check out the website there, but I don't want to keep talking about her. I want you to see her, and let's have a conversation together. So let me go ahead and welcome Tarra Simmons. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today, Marwan.
I appreciate you taking out time out of your busy schedule and this late in the election to spend a little bit of time with us and just kind of share with us, you know, what you're doing, what your intent is if you were reelected and all that good stuff there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to The Conduit and supporting Marwan in his new venture and for having me here today. I am Tarra Simmons. I'm your current state representative from the 23rd. The 23rd goes from 11th Street in West Bremerton. And I have parts now of Rocky Point and Marine Drive. That's new to my district as of redistricting that happened in November. And then it goes all the way out to the Hood Canal Bridge. So Kingston, Hansville, Paulsbo, Silverdale, and Bainbridge Island as well. I live in Tracyton, so in East Bremerton. I have lived in East Bremerton since I was 13 years old. My early childhood, I grew up in Stockton, California, in a very over-policed neighborhood. My father is Latino, and it was a predominantly Black neighborhood. And my father was a crack addict. And I had my first son here in Bremerton when I was 15, after overcoming a lot of violence and poverty in my childhood. Um, and I think those, I've had a lot of ups and downs in life. And, I've been clean and sober now for 11 years. And I think, all of the experiences I've had, both positive and negative, have really informed my advocacy and what I'm fighting for in Olympia. Today now I'm an attorney and a civil rights activist and the founder of the Civil Survival Project. Um, but I know that all of the needs that people have that are incarcerated really comes from not having a first chance at life and not having affordable housing, access to healthcare, economic security. Um, and so, I've been using those experiences to advocate for our community here in the last two sessions. So I just completed my first term, and it was all on Zoom, which really made it more difficult because a lot of the work we do is really building relationships and trying to work across the aisle with Republicans as well to make things a little bit smoother when we want to pass good policy. And I didn't have the opportunity to do that in my first term because we were remote. But I think I was uniquely effective as a freshman legislator. I passed 6 bills in my first term and brought home a lot of funding for our district as well. Things like the Welcome Home program and the Rejuvenation Center with Drayton Jackson, and a lot of investments into Kitsap mental health and Kitsap community resources, and all of those things. And I can talk more about my policy bills here, but just know that I am the vice chair of the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee. I also serve on the Public Safety Committee, so had a big role in the police reform package. Also serve on the Healthcare Committee and really working to make St. Michael's get their act together in our district and make sure that people have access to healthcare. And then I was the only freshman appointed to the Rules Committee, which is a committee that kind of determines what comes to the floor. So that was kind of cool and a big honor. If I go back, I am really hoping to get on the Appropriations Committee because so much of the things that our community needs is in the budget. And I would like to have a bigger impact on the budget and getting the funding to our most vulnerable communities. So I am running and hope that you all will support me in my reelection.
So I appreciate that. Let me ask you a few questions. So since you're in this unique position where you are running for reelection, right? I had your opponent on last week, and so the questions are more centered around, well, what will you do if you are elected? And so the first question I have for you is based on what you wanted to accomplish your first term and where you're at now, do you feel like you got the things that were on your agenda, the things that you ran for, your platform, or did you feel like there were some things that kind of fell short? Tell me where your thoughts are there.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is extremely frustrating actually working in the legislature because things are so incremental. I come from an activist world and I want everything done now, and I want our people to stop being marginalized and have their basic needs met. And it's so incredibly frustrating. And while I was effective compared to other freshman legislators and that I did get 6 bills through, I think I introduced about 13 or 14 bills and didn't, and a lot more budget provisos and didn't get everything I wanted through. And, I was very fortunate that I already had a lot of experience doing advocacy in Olympia before I joined the legislature. But most of the time, your first term is really about learning the process and learning who is the staff members that help you develop this different kinds of policies. Who do you go to to get things done? There's a lot of staff in the legislature. And so, no, I don't think I accomplished all of my campaign goals. If I did, I could just hang up my hat and say, okay, we're going home. But I think it's an ongoing thing. Like I said, I have been a leader on criminal justice reform, and that's the policy area that I know super well. Um, but everything is so intersectional. It's all related to poverty and racism. And if you look at the health outcomes and the education outcomes and the wealth disparities of people of color. I mean, there's so many different policies that need to be addressed, and there's no way that I'll probably ever accomplish it all in my life, unfortunately, because the system is makes it so difficult to get even incremental change. I did get some things through, which I'm really happy about, and I can tell you, the bills that I did get through, for example, reenfranchisement, of formerly incarcerated people. That was my freshman bill. And we know that taking away the voting rights of people with criminal history is rooted in racism. And it was a way to control the Black vote. And so instead of, you could no longer discriminate based on skin color, we decided we would discriminate based on criminal records and then give 1 in 3 Black men a felony. And I was able to get my freshman bill through that reenfranchised everybody as soon as they leave prison. But I want to get it to where you never take away their right to vote. If people in prison could vote, then legislators would pay attention to what's going on there. There's a lot of abuse going on there. So that was just one of the bills that I got through that I was proud of. But I did get 5 others, and I still have a ton of work to do. Marwan, are you there? Okay, Marwan. I got your text. Oh, you lost he lost power, so we're just going to keep going. And so he's asked me to answer a question around give me two things you want to achieve this term. One thing I'd really like to achieve is we need to make sure that we are saving reproductive justice for people who need abortion care. And right now we have an issue in that we have one hospital in this district that is a Catholic hospital where we are suffering with potential loss of access to reproductive health care and transgender and gender affirming care and death with dignity and things like that. We don't have anything in the state that allows for demanding that Catholic hospitals provide healthcare for all people. So Senator Randall and I have been working on the Keep Our Care Act, which would provide for oversight when we have mergers and acquisitions of hospitals. And so I'd really like to make sure that we pass the Keep Our Care Act this coming session. I also would really like to see us pass safe patient ratios. Our nurses are leaving in droves from the emergency room and from the hospital because we don't have safe standards. I was a very strong advocate for that bill. We passed it on partisan lines. No Republicans voted for that out of the House. And then it got over to the Senate and we didn't have enough votes to pass it from the Senate. And what it would do is provide that nurses could only have a set amount of patients. So they're not overworked and quitting as they are. And also, so patients that are getting care at St. Michael's actually get quality care. So healthcare is really important. Also, I would like to abolish court fines and fees for poor people. I've made a lot of progress. I passed a bill around that, but I'm on the verge of actually abolishing them. So if you are convicted of a crime and you are indigent and you don't have money, you're no longer given those court fines and fees. I think funding our court system on the backs of poor people has not been working, and we need to stop that. So that's a bill that I want to see through as well.
Tara,
Yes.
let me ask you, why is that important?
Well,
Why is that important for those to have them abolished, right? You talked about not funding on the backs of folks that can't pay, but why is it important to them? Will you just kind of go into that? Because I think a lot of times people don't understand, right? They're looking at it like, well, isn't this a way for them to learn their lesson and maybe not commit another crime, right? Can you just share with them?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from my lived experience of having $7,600 of court fines and fees imposed upon me when I was a drug addict and selling a small amount of drugs to support my habit, and then 12% interest accumulated while I was in prison. And then I come out and I'm working at Burger King for minimum wage, which was $9.19 at the time. And they're garnishing my paycheck to pay these court fines and fees. It wasn't restitution to a victim. It was money to pay the prosecutors and the county clerks and the criminal defense lawyer that I had. And, taking away from my paycheck to pay these court fines and fees impacted my children in tremendous ways. I couldn't buy my kids shoes. I couldn't afford housing. And so we garnish, even if poor people get a little job, we garnish their paychecks. You can't get and many times you can't get your driver's license. We don't have the best transportation system here in Kitsap County. If you don't have a driver's license and and people are going to continue to drive out to survive. And so then they're going to get hit with a driving while license suspended and go to jail because they can't pay the fines to get their license. So monetary sanctions is what we call it, giving poor people financial penalties that they cannot afford. People have to make choices between food and shelter and clothing for their children or paying these court fines and fees. And it's ridiculous. And we need to stop that kind of system here in Washington state. And I am been making progress on that for many years. And I'm very, very close to the complete abolishment of court fines and fees on poor people when they're convicted of a crime.
Wow. Let me ask you this. Now, when you were saying that you were getting garnished, do you know what percentage of your check was getting garnished?
They can garnish up to 50%. I think they were only garnishing like 25%, but still that's huge. That's
Right.
huge when you're making $9 an hour and the cost of housing is what it is. And I mean, it was hard to even find anybody to rent to me because I had a criminal record, to begin with. And that's still a problem as well. 1 in 3 people in this country has a criminal record of some kind. And that's a large amount of people that have never had representation. I am the first formerly incarcerated legislator in our nation. So we have never had representation. Yeah. We've never had people standing up for these issues. And so while I am a legislator for our ferries, for our healthcare, for affordable housing, I also spend a lot of my time focusing on an issue that has never had representation in our country before, and in making my community better.
So, this I think what you're saying here is super important, and this is one of the things that my organization advocates for. And just for the listeners, as an example, if someone was making $15 an hour right now, and let's say 33% was garnished, and now they're really earning $10 an hour at 160 hours a month, 40 hours a week is $1,600. Well, you got to pay taxes, right? So now you're talking about 1280. If you're taking out 20%, where are you renting for 1280? And that's just the rent, right? So you talk about recidivism and not giving people choices, right? To make a different choice, to be, productive members of society, as they like to say, right? Which we know those are can be very coded language there. If we're not going to support our folks, then the expectation is what? Build more prisons, do these things. And so, yeah, I think that that's really important. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate you advocating for that.
Yeah. And I just want to flag also that when people are working in poverty wages with our minimum wage, $15 an hour, it's not even enough, right? It really leads people to other things to survive, whether that's committing crime, the underground economy, getting side hustles, having to work 3 jobs so they can't be home for their kids, or getting into unhealthy relationships. And when we see domestic violence is all about power and control, and it can be women or men or non-binary people can all be victims of domestic violence. And then we stay in unhealthy relationships out of need to provide to pay for rent, because it's really hard to pay rent on one income nowadays. And so it has such huge impacts. And then it has impacts on our kids. When our kids see parents that are in unhealthy relationships, they grow up thinking that's normal. Or when kids see their single mom having to work 2 or 3 jobs, mom can't be home, or dad, the single parent can't be home sitting with that child doing homework and teaching them about healthy communication, about just general life skills. And so all of this is so interconnected, and the criminal legal system just amplifies it all. And that's the solution that a lot of us go to for these social issues. And so that's why I do work on the criminal justice system, because I'm trying to get the funding out of the criminal justice system and into community, until we can pass, significant progressive revenue tax policy where the rich are paying their fair share of the infrastructure that we all need. We have to really be thoughtful about our targeted investments, and stop spending so much on incarceration and those types of things. So
Absolutely. We have a comment from the audience from Christy. Thank you for your comment. The impact of the lack of affordable housing is astounding on our community members.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, we gave, I think, $300 million, maybe $500 million to the Housing Trust Fund in the last session. We had a surplus because we got all this COVID money, and we gave all of this funding to the Housing Trust Fund. And our developers here in Kitsap County are not taking advantage of that. So I have been working with Kirsten Jewell over the interim. I connected her with the Kitsap Building Association. I know that she went and presented to them about 2 weeks ago, trying to find developers that will access this funding that we have to build affordable housing. In addition, we gave a ton of money for rental assistance, but I agree we need, and we did pass two really good policies. One was just eviction, to make sure you have to have just cause to evict people now. And the other one was making sure that people have 6 months notice if your
Mm,
rent is going to increase by 10% or more. But really what's going on is rent gouging. People know that they can get away with this and that they can charge this amount of rent, especially in Kitsap County where you've got the Navy coming in. And the Navy, and they've increased their housing allowance. So when Navy boats are in, landlords can charge and they'll fill their spaces with military people. And that leaves the rest of us here suffering to find affordable housing. So I am all for, getting more like ADUs, more multifamily housing. There's been a big issue with local government not wanting us to change the zoning regulations to allow for multifamily development near transit. But I think, we definitely need to do a lot more bold policy, and it's been very, very difficult to make progress on some of these issues in Olympia.
all right. Well, thank you for answering that. Christy also says, awesome. We need more effective advocates like you to lead the way. So
Thank
again,
you,
thank
Chris.
you. For all those that are tuning in, this is our interview with Tarra Simmons, running for re-election for the Washington House of Representatives. And so we are asking Tara some questions, and she's letting us know what it's going to be like if we are to reelect her. So thank you for spending some time with us today. Let me switch and then we'll come back to some other questions.
Okay.
So there is Kitsap E-Race, which is Kitsap Equity, Race, and Community Engagement Coalition. They are a part of a legal legacy of people-powered change of years of Black, Indigenous people of color, and allies engaged neighborhoods in the hard work, the collective work of building a beloved community. Kitsap E-Race Coalition is a coming together of groups and individuals boosting interconnected race equity work, rooted in relationships, collaboration, and commitment to racial justice. The coalition tenaciously organizes for thriving community and profound, accountable, and libertary institutional change. So they have questions that they submit to their to folks when they're people are running for office and school boards and things like that. So I asked your opponent some of these questions, and I want to do the same thing for you. So a couple questions here. The first one is, do you use a race equity lens in your decision making? If so, please give us specific examples and describe your progress.
Yeah, absolutely. I have done a lot of work. Like I said, my father is Latino, my children are Black, but I grew up in a Black neighborhood. And I've always been close to the needs of the Black community because of where I came from and who was around me. And even though I'm very white presenting, I suffered a lot of the traumas of systemic racism because of where I grew up. And so every single policy that I do look at through a racial equity lens, and particularly how is this going to affect the poor Black community? And, I try to get data to guide my decisions, but I also talk with trusted co-conspirators and hear anecdotally how a certain policy will impact the poor Black community. And when I look at the data, for example, in criminal justice reform, sometimes people will have great policy ideas like, let's let out of prison everyone who has a drug possession charge or a this kind of charge. And then when you look at the data, it will actually make racial disparities in prison worse because more white people have been convicted of that certain crime versus people of color. So I do try to get the data from the Administration Office of the Courts and look and see how a policy will either improve or make worse racial disparities in the criminal legal system. And I try to do that for every policy. In fact, we do have a racial equity tool that my caucus has developed. Not everybody has been good about using it. And I'm the one saying, whenever I think that a policy might have a negative impact on communities of color, I will say, can we pause? Can we have an equity pause? And can we break out our tool and look at this? And which communities have we talked to about this policy? Have we talked to communities of color? Have we seen the data on how this policy will either increase or decrease racial disparities in whether that's the education system or the healthcare system? I just tend to really know the criminal justice system very well because that's where I'm on the committees for that. So, but yes, I am really happy to hear that my speaker, I've been really pushing for more race equity work in the legislature. And in fact, last year we had formal anti-racism training together, and some of my colleagues are not coming along to it, but some of them are. But I, through the interim, I was really feeling pretty traumatized being in the legislature because sometimes even my Democratic colleagues who I respect will introduce legislation that is going to have a negative impact on communities of color and make things worse. And I get kind of triggered, especially if it has to do with criminal justice, because I'm the first and only person there who has survived the trauma of the criminal legal system. And so my speaker is now we're going to make some really good structural changes in the legislature. I think that will make it a little bit easier for me to serve next term.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that answer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We've got a comment in the chat here. Is there anything the legislature can do to keep Kitsap landlords from basically cudgeling to set rent at or above the Navy's housing allowance? When the last boat came in and my friend needed to find housing, she was unable to find anything, not even a studio apartment here for less than $1,800 a month. In order to afford that rent, a single person would need to make at least $74,000 a year, which is about $34 an hour. Obviously, this is far above the average salary here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the legislature could set like rent caps and prevent the rent gouging that's going on. That would take a legislature filled with progressive voices. And I don't think we have the votes for that. And so that's why some of my most progressive allies in the legislature, I'm part of the Progressive Caucus. There's about 20 of us in the House, 98 seats, about 20 progressives, 58 Democrats. And I would say that's why we're trying to do other things that incentivize landlords to behave and provide tax exemptions, incentivize the development of ADUs and multifamily housing and things like that, or give them money to build affordable housing, because we just don't have the votes to have, rent control caps. I mean, it's not that I mean, I'm for it, but there's just not enough of us there to do that in Washington, unfortunately.
How many people do you think it would take to have the political will to change that?
Well, you need 50 votes in the House, you need 25 in the Senate, and you need a governor. That's what you need to pass a bill. And so if we have 58 Democrats, we need 50 of them to be willing to vote for policy. And, for example, my voting rights bill, I lost like 6 Democrats. I had 1 Republican, and I lost 6 of my colleagues because for whatever reason, it's something as simple as like voting rights, but it was for, those bad people. Because whenever someone thinks of someone with a criminal record, they think of, a scary Black man. That's what they see in their mind. And so, racism is like really prevalent still and in Washington, even though we have a trifecta, it still plays into everything that we're doing.
When you say trifecta, you mean having the House, Senate, and the governor?
Yes. Yeah, we have the House, the Senate, and the governor. And so we get more done than a lot of other states because we have that power and control. When you have a divided legislature, it's harder to get progressive things through. I know that, up until 2017, the Republicans had control of our Senate, for example, and we couldn't pass anything during those years that was helpful to the most vulnerable communities. But in the last 4 or 5 years, we've passed some pretty bold policies. Our police reform package was really bold. We've also passed a working families tax credit, starting next year, poor working families are now going to get like a second earned income credit, one from the feds and one from the state. We've been able to make a lot of progressive change. We've done a lot on our environmental policy. We have done things like just cause eviction. And now every person who faces eviction has a right to an attorney, right?
Right.
You never had that before. We have done a lot of things, but because we've had the trifecta, but it's still not enough for me. I still want to do a lot more.
Now, Christy's saying, is that something that could be done through a public initiative? I have seen a public initiative floating around here for healthcare. So
Yeah.
could that be done that way?
I mean, yeah, I think that the
Right.
ballot initiative process, it costs a lot of money. So you have to have a lot of kind of external stakeholders to do a ballot initiative. But it is something that probably could be done through ballot initiative. And, I would come back on the show in, probably February and let you know what I'm hearing. I know that we are really, there's several of my colleagues that are very focused on housing this coming session. Unfortunately, I'm not on the housing committee, and so I'm not invited to all of those. But I am thinking about going on the housing committee just because it is the top issue, I think, for our district. I'd have to give up my public safety or my healthcare, though, because you can only be on 3. So, and I kind of want to be on the budget committee because I think I can make a difference there. So it's like, where do I go, to be in the weeds and in the most current up-to-date information? Housing is on my short list of places I would like to be. I do work on the ferries a lot. So yeah.
So let me diverge really quick. And you're giving us such an education. So first, appreciate you coming on and also offering to come back in February and update us as to what's going
Yeah.
on. A lot of us don't understand how politics work. And so, I heard you say, hey, we only get to pick 3. So you have constituents, all over, and they're all tugging on you, advocate for this, advocate for that. How do you juggle that if you're only able to kind of pick 3? But, housing is also really important too. So what do you do? And how do you articulate that to your constituents?
Yeah, well, we work as a team in the House for sure. Like the housing experts and the people who are leaders would be Representative Bateman and Representative Macri. They are in the weeds constantly, having meetings every day about that, about housing. And then, so when we're in session, we're constantly in communication, and they're telling me, what the most compelling policies are right now and how I can be helpful. Maybe I have a good relationship with one of our colleagues that they don't, and they need me to go and speak to that colleague. So we really partner up, especially the Progressive Caucus, and we divide up our work and try to leverage our relationships and our knowledge and our connection to community grassroots groups to get things done together. But I would never be the prime sponsor on a housing bill at this point because I'm not on that committee and I'm not deep in the woods. I will be a prime sponsor on public safety, on healthcare, on things that go before civil rights and judiciary, because those are the areas that I am sitting on the committee and I'm very in the weeds on those issues. But so, for example, my seatmate, Drew Hansen, anything public broadband related, he is the go-to. He led the bill. He knows the issue super in the weeds. He knows what Comcast is thinking at any moment. You know what I mean? He's talked to all of the stakeholders that are against it, and he's neutralized them, and he knows. So that's how we kind kind of partner up and we build camaraderie and trust within our small caucus, and then we help educate each other.
I definitely have some questions for him. So
Yeah,
I have some very torn feelings about Comcast. So
yeah,
they do
yeah.
some good things, but I didn't have internet for a second. We're in a live broadcast. Comcast.
Yeah, I know, right? So hopefully soon we're going to have options, right? We're going to have a public
Oh,
Kitsap public utility district that's going to have internet access for us. I mean, that's, really exciting. So
let me hit the horn on that one.
yeah,
Okay. I'm just saying.
yeah.
Let's switch to CRT here. What do you know about critical race theory and how did you learn what you know? What's your opinion on all the controversy surrounding CRT? Because there's a lot, especially right now in our public schools. And will an accurate understanding of CRT be important to your position if you're reelected, and how? How have you
Yeah.
faced that during your first term?
Yeah, I mean, we are not teaching our children critical race theory. I took critical race theory in college. Okay, so we are teaching our children facts about the history of the shameful history of slavery in our country, and how that has caused generational, um, trauma, generational disparities in wealth accumulation, how redlining has affected that, home ownership, how, we are teaching our children facts, and they need to know the facts, because if we ever want to have, um, a society and a state and a community that everybody does have equality, right? Which, my colleagues across the rotunda they are for equality. They are not for equity. They don't understand the difference. They think we'll just get equality, but they don't understand that um, communities that have not had the same foundation need extra help, right? Need
Mm,
extra help to get to the same level,
mhm,
right? With home ownership and things like that. We have to do targeted investments in order to um, really see equality. So I don't know why there's so much controversy. It really hurts my heart that there's controversy about teaching our children about racial equity. We're not teaching them really about critical race theory, because that's we're not teaching them the same language. The language changes the older you get, and the more sophisticated you get in your understanding and able to talk about these things. I think there's a lot of feelings, because I'm white presenting. So I get to go between spaces a lot. And when, I'm in spaces of white people, I think that they're feeling like, well, I've had my life hard too. I was poor, or they think that somehow giving more targeted investments or to communities of color will somehow take away from them. And, I think it's a lot of fear, and a lot of fear of losing power, and a lot of fear of losing, just power, I would say. And it's unfortunate, because I don't see that. And I think, as a white presenting woman, I speak about anti-racism all the time. And I try to really, and I'm evolving, right? So I probably started my journey of knowing about racism just anecdotally from my lived experience. But then I have also been going to things like showing up for racial justice, or taking anti-racism trainings, or taking when I was in law school, I was able to study under somebody named Dean Spade, who is a phenomenal anti-racist, transgender abolitionist. And I took 2 classes with him. One was law and social movements, and the other was poverty law. And so I read a lot of books, Angela Davis, and the new Jim Crow. I have so many books still on my bookshelf up here I'm looking at. But so that's how I've gotten to know about critical race theory, is through education later on in life. But I think my first exposure was just anecdotally because of the communities I grew up in and because of seeing, you know, disparate outcomes. For example, my older son, he's 29 now, Davon, you know, he's Black and he grew up here in the Central Kitsap School District, just like I did. And when he was in kindergarten, he's the only child of color in his class. You know, neither of my boys have ever had a teacher that looked like them. And so ever since, you know, being the mother to my two sons, I've had to fight for them in the schools. You know, why are my kids getting suspended over this, you know, misbehavior, you know, and really working on the school to prison pipeline and all of this other stuff. So, what do I know about critical race theory? I know that we need to ensure that people, educators, everyone in positions of power, everyone in systems, leadership position of any kind of system, whether that's the foster care system, the healthcare system, the education system, they need to be well versed in it, so they can use their positions to truly bring the equality that everyone says we want.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. That was a nice, complete answer there.
Mhm.
Again, if you are joining us, this is our interview with Tarra Simmons, running for re-election for the Washington House of Representatives. We have a comment in the chat. I agree. My public education was whitewashed. The lack of accurate information and history impacted my world lens until I became an adult, and became exposed to the real information. My generation is responsible for backlash against CRT. We are taught to be colorblind.
Mhm.
Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's Oh, go ahead if you're gonna comment
Oh
on
no,
that.
I was just agreeing. Yep.
All right, Cynthia Brady says, "Hello, Tara."
Hello,
Uh,
sister. I love you.
Let's switch directions and talk a little bit about police reform.
Mhm.
Your opponent and I had a discussion on that. One of the things that I brought up was talking about qualified immunity. So we were looking at different ways to solve some of the issues. My thought was if you removed qualified immunity, yeah, I don't really think that we need to defund the police, but if you were
Mhm.
to get rid of qualified immunity and made officers accountable, then the community can see when there's, video footage, right, of what happens. And I think they fairly assess what happened in the situation.
Mhm.
To that end, also, I'm going to put a couple things together. She was a big supporter of the cameras, right? But
Mhm.
we see a lot of instances where cameras weren't turned on, they didn't catch the information,
Mhm.
and, neither one of us knew how the technology worked, but it's like, "Oh, so could it be connected to your gun?" So as soon as you unclick it, that camera starts, and you don't have those controls, and the technology can get
Mhm.
better and just constantly record and can't be cut off. The other thing that we were talking about, I asked her about, I said, "Hey, there's legislation in other cities where it's illegal to record, officers. And, some officers are like playing music loud so they can't be heard
Mhm.
as to what they're doing." So just kind of putting all those things together. For me, I would like to see those things, outlawed and officers be um held responsible if they are participating in such despicable acts from my point of view on that. But if you got
Mhm.
rid of qualified immunity, that thin blue line would start to uh, be erased,
Mhm.
because good
Mhm.
cops can come forward and not worry about the retaliation and being called a rat and all those things that happen on the inside. I think that, there should be some kind of a national, record where it follows officers. So you don't
Mhm.
just get to lose your job because you're a bad cop and then go to another city and get hired. That's going to carry on. And they need to
Mhm.
be fiscally responsible for the wrongdoing, because if you hit people in their wallet, that's really where the change comes from. So just kind
Mhm.
of putting all that together because we're close to our time. Will you just kind of, give us your thoughts on police reform?
Absolutely. You know, I co-sponsored almost all of the police reform legislation that we passed, and I sat on the public safety committee. So I'm very in the weeds. I think we passed about 14 bills after George Floyd, and people forget so quickly about our community marching in the streets. You know, and it's very disappointing because this is what my opponent is running on. That I am soft on crime and I don't support our police and all this. And you know what? I've actually gone riding with twice in the last few months with a sheriff and a Bremerton police. I am endorsed by our police. I'm endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police. I'm endorsed by our local sheriff. I have good relationships. You know, I met with our Kitsap County sheriffs and police chiefs, or our sheriff, John Giese, and the police chiefs of Squamish, Bainbridge Island, Port Gamble, Paulsbo, Bremerton, and Port Orchard, which isn't even in my district. And I let Matt Brown come along. I met with them several times during session. And, you know, I do not hate the police. I value them. I appreciate them. My son is 19 and he wants to be a police officer. And I will never say defund the police. I do want us to have an effective 988 system so mental health responders can respond to behavioral health. I think the police want that too. They don't want to deal with the behavioral health stuff. There are some people in our community who are not safe in our community right now, and they need a timeout. Now, I don't think our jails and prisons are the answer. I think our jails and prisons need to be definitely changed. But I definitely co-sponsored our qualified immunity bill. It did not pass. I do think, just like I'm a lawyer, right? And I was a registered nurse. If I commit malpractice, I can be civilly liable for that. Our police officers should be held to the same standards. If they commit malpractice and take someone's life, they should be held civilly liable for that. Why do they get special treatment where teachers, nurses, doctors, lawyers don't get that? We want a professional police system that we can trust. And our good police officers want that too. And we do need them. We don't have anyone else to call, unfortunately, when someone's breaking in my house and going to harm me. I need to be able to call the police. But I want them to be caretakers and to not kill me or my children. And if they do, they should be civilly liable. And that's what qualified immunity is. Qualified immunity gives them protection from civil lawsuits when they commit malpractice. I saw Christy's question. I don't think that they should have I don't think they should be protected. I think that they should be liable, just like every other professional, and that we should continue to support them and give them the best training to do their jobs in a responsible way, and that we should weed out the bad apples. And so I'm really proud of my little son. He's going to be one of the first Black cops in our county, and he's going to be there holding his colleagues accountable, and he's going in there for the right reasons. And so I don't hate the police. I don't want to defund the police, but I want them to do their jobs.
Can you explain qualified immunity? That was Christy's question.
Yeah. Christy, qualified immunity is a law that says that police are not civilly liable. They can't be civilly sued when they commit, malpractice or kill somebody or, do anything negative. So, so it's against civil suits. They're immune from civil suits. And so they can't be personally liable. Like you cannot sue them and take their house or sue them and take their 401k or their bank account or their assets. Now, it used to be really hard also to criminally, it is a higher standard to sue somebody criminally, right? To get them criminally convicted, it's a very high standard. And I'm really glad that now we have that Office of Independent Investigations. So it will no longer be our local police and our local prosecutor making decisions. It will be at the state level now. And we also did do the decertification process. So if you lose your certification, you can't just go to another police agency and become a police officer there. So there were several reforms that we made in our package, and the police actually supported most of them. And we went back and we clarified some. The only one that they're still upset about is the lack of vehicular pursuits, which vehicular pursuits are very dangerous. 60% of the people that die in vehicular pursuits are bystanders, innocent bystanders, or the police officer themselves. So
Wow.
yeah. So, we should not be doing them unless, it's the only way. And we have other tools that are effective, like using the Washington State Patrol plane to track people and then putting spike strips down. That is much safer. So there are safer ways to achieve the same goal, and so I've been a proponent for that. But I am, willing to tweak some of the law in order to restore some of the vehicular pursuits. But I really want them to be monitored, and to ensure safety for all people.
The only other thing that I would add as we kind of wrap up here, and I want to kind of get your final thoughts. Uh, One other thing that I added to your opponent was the fact that I believe that, okay, you're a 28-year veteran and you do something that's wrong. You should not be able to just, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and retire, before, and I'll just get my pension. Again, if you hit people where their pockets are, they're more likely to do right than not, right? And they have guns. They are put in a position to protect us, and so they need to be held to a higher standard, right?
Mhm.
With great power comes great responsibility, and so there is a great responsibility in that, and we hold our doctors and other folks in that light, and I think our officers should be held that way also.
I do too. And it doesn't mean we hate them. And it's not an individual officer. And I try to encourage them that this isn't personal. This is about professionalizing your profession, just like other professions. Nurses can't, be high and go to work and not have consequence. I mean, we have to be professionals. We have rules, and policing needed some rules too. So our community starts to build some trust for them. We saw too many people, predominantly people of color, unarmed, losing their lives. It's a long list. It's not George Floyd. It's not Stony Chief Stick. It's not David Pruitt. It's a long, long list. And we need to have trust.
So the last question that I have for you before we kind of wrap here is, obviously I'm Black American here. I consider
Mhm.
myself a foundational Black American, and in that, we see a lot of pandering from the left right now, as many are very terrified that they're not going to get their reelection, and so some are now starting to reach out to Black men in particular and say, "Hey, we want to advocate for you." Uh, but they haven't really asked us before, right? They just say, "Get your booty to the polls."
Mhm.
Last election, they put strippers out for us to try to vote. Now this time they have no voting, no vucking. That's what they V, and it's just this really offensive video that they're showing to try to get males to vote, Black males, and basically it's like, if you don't vote, then we're gonna cut off sexual access, and so that's really offensive. Um,
Wow.
and so, there is a black male political agenda that many of us, believe in. But people don't ask us, well, what's our agenda, right? We always, um, if you do ask us, a lot of times it's more communal. But many
Mhm.
of our black boys are not reading at level. We know that they are criminalized from kindergarten to elementary and so on. And so, are there any things that you have? Um, if you are reelected, is going to be
Mhm.
targeting our black boys. Black men experience more homelessness than any other demographic. So just kind of all the way through. One of the
Yeah.
things that I share is my frustration with BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and people of color, for the audience, is they will often state Black statistics, particularly Black male statistics, right? George
Mhm.
Floyd, right? Trayvon Martin. And then all of a sudden, everything opens up, and you'll see other demographics kind of leapfrog and get the resources, and Black
Mhm.
males are still kind of left where they're at, right?
Mhm.
So there's this kind of duality of victimization on Black males. The murder, and then kind of profiting or benefiting off of the death of a black male. So is
Mhm.
there anything that you have on your platform that is really targeting black boys or black men in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the things that I do, as I mentioned in the very beginning, when I look at disparities in the criminal legal system, it is Black men who are definitely the most criminalized. And so, all of the work that I do on school to prison pipeline, on criminal legal system, I'm looking at it through that lens. How is this going to affect the Black community, really, because of the stark disparities? And if we do help reduce the overcriminalization of Black men, we will help reduce the incarceration of all people if you go for the most impacted. So I would say that all of the things that I do, I try to use that lens because of where I came from. And it is very sad to me to see people pandering. I did not ever hear of the video you're talking about. I did not know about those things. I see the Republicans pandering too, which is really disingenuous in my mind. I know of some local activity of my opponent. I won't say that here, but I definitely have heard, and it's very disingenuous. I would say look at who's been there and look who's been showing up because they actually care, and because that's who they are. And I definitely would love to hear more about your if you have a group that has like an agenda in writing. I would love to see that, and I would be willing to potentially pick something off that list and champion it, even if it's not on my committees. But I think that everything that I do, I use that lens, and I really am trying, because I didn't get to the other bills that I had passed, but one is about, court fines and fees. Again, hurts Black men the most. Voting rights for being in the criminal justice system benefits Black men the most. Housing vouchers for people when they come out of prison benefits Black men the most, because who's mostly criminalized.
That's a
Access to
huge one. That
yeah,
is a huge
I got $700 a month for 6 months for every single person coming out of prison now. That wasn't there before. And now every person releasing from prison gets a $700 a month housing voucher for 6 months. It's not enough, but it's better than what it was before. And that's why I say I get frustrated. It's not enough. Have I done everything I want to do yet? No, I probably will never finish everything that I want to do, even if I serve for 20 years. But I'm making progress. So yeah, I think we're definitely aligned, and that's based on where I came from, who I'm fighting for, and being part of the new civil rights movement, the new Jim Crow. That's who I am. So
Absolutely. I'm gonna give you Christy's statement and just answer your question. I'd actually just put that in the chat in regards to the platform. So there's more than 30,000 of us that believe in this here, and this is kind of a streamlined list of things that impact Black males, and these are things that are important to us directly: family court reform, education, affirmative action, targeted homeless programs, targeted unemployment programs, law enforcement, which you touched on, intimate partner violence and homicide. If you're watching what's happening nationally, and I'm talking to the audience now, a lot of that happens. There's a lot of proxy violence that happens. Proxy violence is where a couple gets into a fight, and maybe the uncle or a friend comes in, and there's violence against the boyfriend, right, or a murder there, and so that is not often counted. Health, targeted cancer campaigns, treatment and recognition, targeted small business support, Social Security and life insurance family support, especially around the fact that the life expectancy actually dropped by 3 years post-COVID for Black males, right? And so we died the fastest. Paternity leave, reverse voter disenfranchisement, Black male specific reparations for the transatlantic slave trade, and then the United Nations. We charge it to you as a genocide of the Black male. So that is their audience, and I will share this with you offline. But you're not hearing anyone nationally talk about these things, and I think that this is an important conversation to have.
Yeah, I had never seen that. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm happy that I did the voting disenfranchisement law here and police reform. And I did do targeted investments as well for Black communities. So for business. So yeah, so I'm making some progress, but I have lots more to do.
I love it. I love it. Now, Christy said, I missed the first part of this interview. Did you talk about the crisis with St. Michael's Hospital and the lack of secular health care in Kitsap County? Our community's health needs are not being met, and the people are afraid if they have medical emergency now due to the issues at St. Michael's. You did a little bit.
I
Uh,
did. I
yeah.
did. And I talked about my Keep the Care Act and also the safe standards, the patient ratio bill. And yeah, definitely did.
So we definitely appreciate spending time with us today, and we just want to get the final words from you. What do you
Yeah.
want the voter to know?
I just want them to know you can call me. My number is 360-649-8378. I actually have been getting lots of calls in the last few days because my number is in the voter pamphlet, and it's been very encouraging. And if there's anything I can do for you, you can reach out to me. I try to go to as many community events as I can, not because I feel like I have to, but because I actually love our community very much. I'm happy to be one of the only representatives of this district that lives in Bremerton. My two seatmates live in Bainbridge. And so I try to focus my efforts on the needs of Bremerton and the needs of the most vulnerable neighbors in the district. It's been an honor to serve you in the last 2 years. It's hard work, but I also feel like it's my purpose in life after all I've overcome. And I'm honored because I get to bring a voice that's never been there. So I would really appreciate your vote for this election. Ballots are out. Also, if you're around on Monday at 4 p.m., we are having a justice rally. We're going to do sign waving, and the Black Student Union and the God's Broken Home University youth, lots of youth and people coming from all over. We're having a big event, and it's actually going to be videotaped and filmed because there's a documentary being made about formerly incarcerated leaders across the country, and it's going to be shared inside prisons. And so there'll be a film crew from New York there. So it's Monday at 4 o'clock on the Manette Bridge. And at 3 o'clock, we're going to make signs at Pups, Cups, and Cones that talk about our shared values around justice system, racial equity, abortion access, environmental justice, economic equity, those types of things. So whatever you want your sign to say, you can say it, you can write it out. We're going to have supplies at 3 o'clock at Pups, Cups, and Cones. And then at 4 o'clock, we're going to have a rally. So I'd love to see you there.
All right. And also, if you want more information, I'm putting Tara's web pages here. So this is Tarra Simmons, representative for the 23rd Legislative District. And then also here, Tarra Simmons re-election. So both of those things are in the chat where you can learn more. If you don't already know her, please get to know her. But more than that, get out and vote. Uh, that is how you're going to see the change that you want to see. Um, I just want to tell you that I appreciate your service and all the things that you accomplished in your first term. That was a tremendous list there, and all the things that you're going to continue to work on. I can say personally that you are very present in the community. You don't see that with all politicians. You are very present in the community. Sometimes I'm like, how does she do it all? Right? And you're here on a Saturday, and I know that you're tremendously busy. So the conduit wants to wish you luck with your campaign. We look forward to having you back to share more. Thank you for imparting knowledge and making us a little bit smarter in regards to how government works. So we really appreciate you.
Absolutely. And I'll be honored to come back in like February when I'm in the middle of session too and give you an update on what's going on, especially around housing, because I know that's really important to our community. So thank you for all you do, Marwan. You do a lot for us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you did bring up housing. There is the pancake breakfast, everyone, that is going to be this Wednesday coming up. And this one is different. It is on 4040 Wheaton Way, Suite 203. But this is actually not just a breakfast. Yes, we're going to feed you, but this one is going to be a working session. So it's going to be 4 hours long from 10 to 2. A lot of people can only be there from 10 to 12. But Bremerton Housing Authority, Salvation Army, KCR, Kids at Public Health, City Council should be there. We're hoping the mayor will be there. We're going to address the unhoused on ML King because we're advocating for bathrooms and things there. And so you are welcome to come if your schedule provides. I invited your opponent, so I want to make sure that I'm equitable on all sides, as we are
Awesome.
not partisan here on the conduit. But yes, just wanted to give that programming note. So again, this was our interview with Tarra Simmons, running for re-election for the Washington House of Representatives. And we want to just thank you and be well, everyone. We will see you next time.
All right.